Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarane Śrīla Prabhupāda ki Jai. If in questioning anyone brought up the names and philosophies of famous contemporary Mayavadis, Prabhupada would become angry. He was adamantly against the mission of the Mayavadis, who denied the absolute reality of Krishna. Prabhupada expressed that they had greatly damaged the original Vedic culture by spreading misleading doctrines. One time, Malati brought up the subject of certain Mayavadi teachings, and Prabhupada, as usual, argued strongly. Afterwards, Upendra chastised Malati, saying that she shouldn't have brought it up because Prabhupada was still recuperating in his health. In his excitement, his blood pressure might rise too much. Malati was silent, but later gave Upendra a letter to be delivered to Prabhupada. What have you said to Malati? Prabhupada asked after reading her letter. That now she no longer feels she can come before me. Upendra explained how he had corrected her for inciting Prabhupada too much. It was nonsense, Prabhupada said, and he told Upendra to apologize to her. Uddhava confided to Kim that he left he felt left out because he never had any questions to ask Prabhupada. Kim encouraged him. One night, Uddhava finally asked, but it was a strange question. Swamiji, said Uddhava, what is Radharani's relationship with Krishna's brother Balaram? Prabhupada was annoyed. Why are you asking that? You don't even understand the basic principle of the Bhagavad Gita. You don't understand the nature of the soul and the super soul of Krishna, super soul or Krishna and devotional service, and yet you are asking questions like this. For a long while, Uddhava didn't ask again. Shortly after Prabhupada's arrival, he continued the process of initiating disciples. Kim and his young sister were initiated at the same time. A few days before, Kim had suggested his sister should go to Prabhupada's apartment and ask to be his disciple. Are you following the four rules? Prabhupada asked. Yes, she replied. And then he said it was all right. I just wanted to say something else, she continued. That is, I heard that you had taken birth because in your last life you had been a physician and had killed a snake for some medical purpose. Prabhupada laughed. Oh, your brother has told you that? Yeah, she replied. No more was said about it. Kim was given the name Krishnadas, and Prabhupada also initiated a few disciples who had returned from New York. He performed the initiation ceremony in the temple and chanted on everyone's beads, including the New York disciples. That night, he also spoke for a few moments on the telephone with Brahmananda in New York and told him, I have returned by the grace of Krishna and I am now fit to serve you. Prabhupada said he was fit to serve the devotees, and he certainly looked and acted wonderfully. But he was still feeling the effects of his stroke of half a year ago. There was a persistent ringing sound like a bell in his head, and he couldn't sleep more than 3 hours at night and one in the day. But he pushed on as always. He even wrote a letter to a disciple pointing out that although he had disturbance in his head, he was continuing to work on the transcendental plane, and he advised his disciples to do likewise. Prabhupada again took up his translating of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which he had put aside for half a year. Living in the same house with the brahmacharis, he would wake before any of them and work at his translating. Then, after they rose around 5, they would hear him ringing a bell in his room, and they would smell incense. Because of their proximity, the boys would often drop by his room. They would watch Prabhupada sitting at his desk, fresh from his morning shower. He would meticulously place several tiny spoonfuls of water in his left palm and then rub a ball of Vrindavan clay into his palm, making the mixture for Vaishnava Tilak. Using a hand mirror, he would artistically make the markings of Tilak, first on his forehead and then on 11 other parts of the body, as directed by the Vaishnava Smriti. Prabhupada would then hold his Brahmana thread and silently say the Gayatri mantras. While facing the pictures of Krishna, he had on a little altar. One day, while sitting with Prabhupada in the morning, Upendra mentioned that the brahmacharis put their tilak on while in the bathroom. No, said Prabhupada. Tilak should be put on in front of Krishna like this. Well, Upendra said, here I have seen them. Here I have seen them putting it on in the bathroom. Do not worry too much about the rules and regulations. Just get everyone to chant Hare Krishna. One thing Prabhupada liked about California was that it was easy for him to obtain eucalyptus twigs there. Prabhupada used them for brushing his teeth in the morning. He liked them cut the thickness of the little finger and about 6 inches long, and they were soaked in water overnight before he used them. At this time, Krishnadas was going out in the morning to pick them. He would keep a good supply wrapped up in tin foil in the refrigerator. Hearing that eucalyptus trees were uncommon in America, Prabhupada had asked Krishnadas to send him a supply wherever he traveled. These sometimes small and domestic dealings of Prabhupada with his disciples may be seen by someone outside of devotional service as of little consequence. But to the devotee, they are always important because the devotee holds the pleasure of his spiritual master as the supreme value in life. If the spiritual master, Krishna's representative, is pleased even by a little service, then that means that Krishna is pleased. For the most part, Prabhupada's disciples simply knew that they loved him, loved serving him, and felt great satisfaction and bliss when he showed his pleasure with them. Govinda Dasi. Govinda Dasi said, he needed some house slippers. I saw that. So I went and bought him some house slippers. He told me he wore size 8. I got him some all man made slippers in San Francisco. They were black with red, fluffy, furry lining so that they were easy to slip on the feet. Whenever he would walk around the house, you could hear this nice little shuffling sound. He would have his hands behind his back and his head held high. Although some of the devotees had their own idea that Prabhupada should go on a special diet, he didn't think much of it. He wanted his regular prasadam, dal, rice, chapatis, and sabji. Upendra was regularly cooking these staples. But one day, Yamuna came into the kitchen and asked Upendra if she could cook a special lunch for Prabhupada. He stepped back and allowed her. Yamuna was learning the art of Indian cooking. She made extra preparations, sour, spicy, and sweet. Upendra brought in the tray as usual without any comment. A few moments later, Prabhupada rang his bell, calling for Upendra. Who has made this prasadam? Prabhupada asked, looking up as he sat on a cushion before a small table which held his lunch. Yamuna Devi cooked it, Swamiji, said Upendra. I do not want such fancy things, said Prabhupada. I want to eat simply, a little rice, a little dal, like that. He wasn't very pleased with the special feast. He was used to eating the same simple things every day. Upendra continued to cook like that, occasionally creating variety by cooking khichdi and fried eggplant in kadhi sauce once a week. But Upendra was also extravagant. Prabhupada confided to Gaurasundar that Upendra is using too much ghee so that I cannot taste the prasadam before it slips down my throat. It is too slippery. One of the devotees who had been with Prabhupada in India wrote that Swamiji should not be given sweets. Prabhupada didn't think much of that either, as he had introduced coconut laddus on the first evening of his return. Upendra. He gave us the recipe that you grate the coconut and cook it in a pot, along with some sugar and camphor, and cook it until it comes to a certain thickness. And then it can be squeezed into balls and offered in this way. So he was giving this instruction to me, and I was following. The stove was an old fashioned type that allowed for one half of the stove to be covered with a safety cover. When I cooked, Prabhupada leaned against the corner of the stove with his elbow, his chin resting in his hands, and he leaned and watched me steer. He got up and walked away and then came back, just like a restless young boy. He walked around the kitchen and then returned to look into the pot, stirring it to see if it was done. He asked, "Is it done?" "I think it's done. It must be done. Let us try." I took the substance out, and although it was still hot, we began squeezing it into balls. As soon as one ball was squeezed, Prabhupada took it and popped it into his mouth. He turned away from the stove and, shaking his head pleasingly, said, "Yes, it is done. Very nice." Prabhupada spontaneously showed his displeasure also. That was the risk of serving him closely as his personal servant or cook. One day, Govinda Dasi was cooking a cereal for Prabhupada's breakfast. When he walked past the kitchen, looked in, and asked, "What are you cooking?" "I'm making cereal, Swamiji," she replied. "But today is Ekadashi," said Prabhupada. "Oh, thank you, Swamiji, I didn't know." She thought that by his reminder, she had not actually done anything wrong. After all, neither he nor anyone else had eaten the grains. But Prabhupada began to criticize her with a severity that surprised her. It was a great disqualification on her part, he said, to cook grains on Ekadashi, the day when devotees fast from all grains. He kept repeating that she had cooked grains on Ekadashi and described her mistake as very serious. Her one mistake seemed to indicate a whole wrong mentality. Govinda Dasi finally felt it was as bad as if she had actually eaten grains, so she fasted entirely for the rest of the day. Many things had to be done exactly right. When Upendra placed a small amount of salt on Prabhupada's plate in front of the rice, it made it difficult for Prabhupada to eat the rice without mixing it in the salt. Prabhupada mentioned it, but when Upendra did it again the next day, Prabhupada said, "I told you to put the salt in the back of the rice, not in front," and foregoing his own pleasure due to his servant's foolishness. Prabhupada added, "Now give me no more salt." The next day, however, Upendra put salt and pepper in separate containers and placed them beside the plate so Prabhupada could move them as he liked. Prabhupada accepted them silently. Whenever a mistake was rectified, he seemed to immediately forget the wrong. The Shastras enjoined, "One can never know the mind of the Acharya." Since this is true, then how can we know Prabhupada? How can we share his inner life in those pleasant homemaking days of December 1967 and January 1968 in Francisco? In one sense, we cannot. As Krishnadas Kaviraj says, "I do not know the deep meaning of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's activities. As far as possible, I shall try to explain them externally. But sometimes Prabhupada reveals himself directly in his own words. I have written my Krishna's grace. I am fit to serve you." We can enter this his thought, we can enter his thoughts through his spoken words. Through those who knew him and lived with him, we have another intimate approach to Prabhupada's life. How they saw him and how they dealt with him. Often this is as close as we can get. Mukunda. It was in this period that Prabhupada went to visit Mr. B.K. Nehru, who was a big Indian government official. I drove Prabhupada to the St. Francis Hotel in a beat up old fort with the name Krishna stenciled in multicolors in three different places on the car. The St. Francis Hotel, of course, is a very elite hotel. We arrived at the front door and there was a doorman. I got out and asked him if we could leave the car in front of the hotel for about 15 minutes. Somehow, I don't know why, he immediately agreed to look after the car. We went up to one of the top floors of the building to a very beautiful suite. Mr. Nehru greeted us. He was wearing Western clothes. I was also wearing Western clothes, and my head wasn't shaved. Mr. Nehru's wife was also there. I sat on the same couch as Prabhupada, with Mr. Nehru in the middle and Prabhupada on the other end. In the beginning, they spoke English. Prabhupada reiterated some of his past life history and mentioned that he had had a pharmacy called Prayag Pharmacy. He had met Mr. Nehru in India, and Mr. Nehru acknowledged that he knew about the pharmacy. Prabhupada then explained how he had taken sannyas. I noted that Prabhupada was very warm and friendly. It was a side of him that I had never seen before. Not that he hadn't been warm and friendly, but to a non devotee person, I had never seen him quite in such a friendly attitude. It was totally intrigued to see how open and almost intimate Prabhupada was becoming with this man. I noticed that Prabhupada was presenting himself as a mendicant, a sannyasi, and then the rest of the conversation took place in Hindi. It was a wonderful time for me to observe the facial expressions and gestures and the great depth of feeling with which Prabhupada communicated, because I had to try to guess what he was talking about. In fact, I was always speculating on what he might be saying. Then, of course, Mr. Nehru and sometimes his wife would interject remarks, all in Hindi. I was spinning enormous fantasies about what they all might be talking about. Prabhupada had introduced me as Michael Grant, secretary, and I was sitting on top of the world from the beginning of the conversation. I felt that I had a stake in this conversation. What that maybe Mr. Nehru is not aware that I am not understanding. I was very tuned in to the mood of the conversation, even though I was not understanding it, but thinking that maybe I was understanding part of it and trying to act as if I might know something about what they were saying. At some point in the conversation, I was getting very involved in my fantasies of what it was about, and I heard the word missionary work come from Prabhupada. He stopped and looked at me momentarily. There, there was a beat, and then the conversation resumed. I didn't realize that I had really been tuned in by that. Prabhupada was asking something. Then later in the conversation, he said in English, "But one word from you," to Mr. Nehru. Then Srila Prabhupada's eyes opened wide and he paused. And I believe he looked around at me at that time. Then, after a somewhat awkward silence, the conversation resumed again. Then I knew that Srila Prabhupada was really asking for a favor and that he was letting me in on this by saying it in English. I felt that all I could do was try to look very serious and important somehow, such that this man would think that by my presence as an American disciple, he could see that Srila Prabhupada was doing great things by converting us Westerners to Krishna consciousness. Somehow I wanted to help, but I didn't know what it was, so I couldn't say. And I just tried to play the part that Srila Prabhupada seemed to want me to play in this transcendental game. Then the conversation became very convivial and the subject had changed. Later, the wife of BK Nehru came forward and called Prabhupada Swamiji and said something in Hindi and gave him something wrapped in tin foil. It was about the size of a small apple. Then they exchanged words, and Srila Prabhupada was very warm and cordial with Mrs. Nehru. On the way out, I asked Prabhupada first of all what the conversation was about. He was very vague, but said it was about some land that he had been trying to get in India, I think in Vrindavan. It may have been in litigation, I don't know, but he was asking Mr. Nehru's help. I asked whether he was going to help, and Srila Prabhupada was again rather vague about it. But he indicated that he felt the meeting was successful, or at least a step in the right direction. Then I asked about Mr. Nehru's wife, whether she was European or what, and Prabhupada said, "No, she is a Parsi." Then on the right back, Prabhupada opened the tin foil, and it was a huge date, the biggest one I have ever seen in my life. And he took it out and took a big bite out of it. and then offered me the rest, which I took, of course. Mukunda was also present with Prabhupada in his room, along with a small group of devotees, when an earthquake took place. The telephone poles and wires began moving outside the window, and the building trembled. No one said anything until Prabhupada said, "What is this?" A devotee replied, "It's an earthquake, Swamiji." Prabhupada said, "Oh," and then the earthquake suddenly stopped. Everyone present was very intent on Prabhupada's reaction. He said, "We can just sit down and chant Hare Krishna." He recounted the bombing of Calcutta during the war. I was in the bomb shelter and the bombs were falling. And I was thinking as I was chanting Hare Krishna that if I had to die now, it would be wonderful to die while chanting Hare Krishna. Mukunda and the other devotees felt secure being in Prabhupada's presence, even during the earthquake. They felt that no matter what catastrophe might happen, they could simply sit with him and chant Hare Krishna and be happy. When Prabhupada had first returned from India, he had criticized Mukunda for failing to obtain the permanent residency status for him. Mukunda had only been able to obtain a temporary visitor's visa. "Why did you do this?" Prabhupada had asked him sharply. Mukunda made a few excuses, and Prabhupada replied, "You do not understand." Later, Prabhupada and Mukunda visited a local immigration office to seek the permanent residency status. The official who met with them was a woman. In the course of the routine conversation, Prabhupada briefly mentioned the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. The woman remarked, "It must be very difficult to follow such a discipline in your life." Prabhupada replied, "No, it is not. It is just a question of remembering God." Then he gave her an example. Just as a woman goes to work and has to think of many different things, yet she never forgets to dress properly. So one has to think of God despite worldly duties. The woman immigration official could understand. During the conversation, the recent earthquake was mentioned, and the woman said that the building they were in was earthquake proof. After the meeting, when Prabhupada was leaving, he said to Mukunda, "There is no such thing as earthquake proof," and he laughed. Lilavati. He called me into his room. He was sitting on his bed talking to Mukunda. When I arrived, he stopped speaking with him and turned to me and said, "So, how are you liking this Krishna consciousness?" And I said, "Oh Swamiji, my life has changed completely." He bowed his head and said, "Thank you very much." He was very pleased. Then he continued his conversation with Mukunda. He was asking him, "So, Mukunda, you have cast so many pairs of kartalas from the ones I have brought, but do not see any of the devotees with them. But I do not see any of the devotees with them." I chimed in and said, "Oh Swamiji, that is because he is charging money." This was my conception of spiritual life. No eating, no money, nothing, everything neti neti neti. So Prabhupada said, "Oh, charging money is bad?" I was surprised. He said, "You must understand that anything that is used in the service of Krishna is not bad, it is good. Money is not bad if it is used in the proper way." This was my first lesson in real renunciation, real spiritual life. He then asked me to edit the first volume of Srimad Bhagavatam, correcting punctuation and grammar. I was so thrilled and enthusiastic. After leaving his room very shortly after we spoke, I immediately began to work. I was extremely excited about doing it. Lilavati's main occupation was taking care of her baby daughter, Subhadra. She would treasure different incidents in which Prabhupada showed attention to her daughter. The first time he saw Subhadra on returning from India, he said, "She is very fortunate." And he quoted a verse from the Bhagavad Gita to the effect that the yogi who does not complete his practice has a chance to be born in a family of pious brahmanas. Another time, noticing that Subhadra was sleepy in his presence, Prabhupada remarked laughingly, "Yes, young children and old men must take a lot of rest." He also held the child several times and played with her. One time, When speaking to a room full of people, Prabhupada suddenly told Lilavati that her daughter was very warm and that she should take off her sweater. He had been speaking on a philosophical topic and had interrupted himself. Others in the room were taken aback to see that Prabhupada was concerned about such a small child. When Prabhupada was leaving in a car to go to a speaking engagement, Lilavati handed him a garland of narcissus flowers through the window of the car. He lowered his head in a humble way and said, "Thank you very much." She then handed him three narcissus flowers that had not been used in the garland. He took them and said, "Oh, and this is from your daughter?" Lilavati laughed and said, "Yes, Swamiji." And he said, "Oh, very nice." Such a thoughtful and clever remarks from Prabhupada about her daughter totally encouraged Lilavati's Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much for reading. Yeah, any reflections you want to share, Prabhuji?
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. I mean, it's a really great opportunity to read with all of you. Yeah, it's very nice. I mean, this incident show, right? I mean, how Prabhupada was dealing with the devotees. Like, sometimes he was very soft, and but at the same time, when there were mistakes, he used to be very harsh. I mean, not harsh, but okay, he was very sharp in his dealings, and of course, with the intention to correct them. And especially the Krishnadas, when he was serving, no, like with the salt next to the rice. I really like the next day. Then he put the salt and pepper in a separate bowl aside, and then Prabhupada accepted that. That means he was, of course, like forgiving the mistakes of his disciples when they were correcting, when they corrected. Now it's nice. How was,
Yes.
I mean, how was your reflection, Prabhuji?
Yes, Prabhuji. I think throughout this reading, I think this entire passage was how the devotees are enjoying the association of their guru. And as you rightly said, yes, I mean, when they were serving the guru for the first time, there were some small mistakes which were happened. I think which Prabhupada intentionally was very strong in correcting them. But once they have corrected it, he had forgotten about the mistake. I think that was, that was such a quality of guru. And and the way and the conversation between Prabhupada and Govinda Dasi Mataji also, they always showcase that Prabhupada always took care of Matajis as his own daughters.
Yeah, right. Adirasa Prabhu?
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji, for reading. I think I got also one point that we should wear tilak not in the washroom but in front of Krishna. So
Yes,
that was nice. Yeah.
that's right. It's very practical. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Prabhuji. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, Varshana Leela has a point.
yeah. Even I also liked few points. Like we got coconut laddu recipe
Yeah.
from
Yes.
Prabhupada. That was amazing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and
Didn't offer.
Hmm?
Means I got
Yeah,
into
even
that
I got that
question.
question at that time. Like, okay, he didn't offer, but maybe he must have done manas. Yeah, I'm very sure.
yes. Yeah, and in this regard, then there was one more point where everybody is saying that it is so difficult to understand what Prabhupada is saying at one point,
Yeah.
meaning and
Mhm.
saying. But then they told it's just that and he was quoting Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami
Mm.
that it is not possible to know exactly.
It is in mind.
Yeah, the Leelas of Prabhupada because they are so elevated people, but we just take them by their words and try to see it through the eyes of the people who know him. So this is
Correct.
also something, yeah,
Darya.
so yeah, many nice things.
Yeah.
And yeah, clearly Prabhupada has this forgive and forget attitude toward his disciple. Yeah, so that was also wonderful.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for reading. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Krishna Prabhu, Hanumataji.
Makaran Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Babuji. One thing you guys have already mentioned a couple of points, which I think also which is very important. First thing is that we should always put tilak not in washroom, always in front of Krishna. And second
Yeah.
thing, which forget and forgive, and how we should be strict about the rules. That is also one thing that I learned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Prabhu.
Yes.
Makaran
Thank you,
Prabhu.
Babuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for reading really nice recitation. I joined late, but yeah, after hearing your all the points, now I know the what exactly happened in which I missed. Thank you so much for the briefing of it.
Thank you for joining, Prabhuji.
Yeah,
And
thank you, Prabhuji.
Prabhuji, you could tell anything, Prabhuji. Even we also forgot, na?
now Makaran Prabhu will go back and read again.
So we should also use this eucalyptus.
For brushing.
Yeah.
Okay, now Ratikili will go in the morning and start eucalyptus sticks.
New one more healthier option.
Yeah. Yeah. I also like that point. I think it was Yamuna Mataji. She cooked very opulent one day, and yeah, Prabhupada didn't like it. I mean, he still enjoyed the chapati, sabji, dal, rice. Yeah, as a staple. Yeah, I mean, I remember like in Vrindavan, somebody asked Jayadvaita Swami why the temple doesn't serve very opulent food every day, and he said like if you eat fish every day, you will die soon. Exactly, and then he mentioned that okay, we should normally eat only like chapati, sabji, dal, rice as the staple from Monday to Saturday, and only feast on Sundays, and just to regulate the diet. Yeah. And I think it comes from Prabhupada. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, Prabhuji. I
That's
think
it, Prabhuji.
yes, Agres Prabhu, go ahead.
No, just say, Prabhuji.
No, actually, exactly this point I was thinking that when Prabhupada says, okay, rice, dal, sabji, simple prasadam, you see so many Prabhupada disciples like, as you said, Jayadvaita Swami, Maharaj. And recently, I mean, our experience also with Samba Prabhuji, even he used to stress, I mean, simple dal, rice,
Yeah.
upma. I mean, I like basic things are sufficient for for serving or honoring prasadam.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes, Prabhuji.
And that also coincides perfectly with Jagannath ji liking karma wise khichdi, right? Actually,
Yes.
I mean, it is such a simple, basic thing, right? I mean, something that can offer, but that was turned to be the most favorite of Jagannath ji.
Yes, Prabhuji. And that khichdi has a special taste in Jagannath Puri, which I think it's difficult to recreate that taste elsewhere.
Yeah. I think that is the bhav of the dham. Yeah.
Yes, correct, Prabhuji. Adras Prabhu, you wanted to add something?
No, I think I was just saying that maybe Ratikili Mataji already follows this rule, na?
Now she got an excuse.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sunday feast.
Only Sunday feast. Yeah.
Sunday feast in temple, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why she doesn't watch me on Sunday. That's one free day to me.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji. I think one last point which I felt was when Prabhupada says this statement, there is no such thing as earthquake proof. I mean,
yeah, and
no matter how much advanced, I mean, I think if Krishna decides that, okay, it's the catastrophe has to hit, then it will hit.
It will hit, exactly.
I think, so basically from a normal point of view, if someone reads this particular statement, I mean, they may think that, oh, I mean, this is all a scientifically developed technology, so it is earthquake proof. But I think Prabhupada here was stressing on from a overall point of view that, yeah, okay, nothing is as resistant. I mean, if Krishna thinks, then
Yeah.
yeah.
That shows, I mean, the broader or the elevated vision of Prabhupada, right? I mean, we always think, okay, it is earthquake proof, means maybe we stay in that illusion that it's all safe. Yeah.
Yes, Prabhuji, correct.
And that's what happens in the material world also. Like, we always are under illusion that we think, oh, everything is okay, everything is safe. Why should I do something?
Correct, Prabhuji. Yeah, this is the summary point, actually.
Yeah.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah. Good lot of learnings from Līlāmṛta.
Yes, Prabhuji. So, yeah, nice recap. And then we'll meet again tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Yeah.
Maybe Adiras Prabhu
is on Friday, and tomorrow is Gaur Bhagwan Prabhu.
Okay.
And Krishna Prabhu, you wanted to read next week on any day?
Yes, I can read from next week also.
Yeah, sure, Prabhuji. Then
no problem. Yeah.
And then Makarand Prabhu also.
Prabhu also, yeah, next week.
Makarand Prabhu next week we'll be reading, so you have to come on time.
But
Yes,
Makarand Prabhu
Prabhuji.
2 days continuously, na? With penalty.
Yes, Prabhuji, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You will get special mercy. Ek peg
Yes,
free.
Prabhuji.
Okay then. Yeah.
Yes,
Prabhuji,
Prabhuji.
Hare
Nice
Krishna.
evening. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Yasya kripa sindhu
Patitanam pavanebhyo namo namah. Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.